Good afternoon, everybody. I am Gail Birks, and I am your host and your tour guide for the Readiness Factor this afternoon. And let me tell you, I'm excited about our guest today. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about her so that you are ready for what we're bringing to the show this afternoon. I have Krysten Bacan. And Krysten is our technology executive and co-founder of NewEdj. She is one of our business partners at CMA Enterprise, and she brings over 20 years of experience in the industry. And throughout her career, she has excelled in technology integration, resource management, and strategic planning. As a CTO and CIO mentor, did you hear what I said? Mentor. Krysten has had the privilege of guiding multiple companies, multinational companies, through periods of growth and transformation. She's also provided her expertise in leadership, in interim roles during times of organizational change. Krysten is a recognized thought leader in her field, and she takes pride in her ability to optimize costs and select and review the best and most important and appropriate MSPs for her clients. Her skill sets include tech third-party selection and assignment, technical vulnerability and data privacy, service delivery optimization, solution selection strategy, and implementation. I'm going to lower this screen so that I can bring Krysten Bacan, my friend, my colleague, my business associate, to the table. Good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, nice to see you. That's quite the introduction. Thank you. Thank you for
Did you
inviting
wonder
me.
what I was talking about?
That's awesome. Thank you.
Just like every other conversation I have been in since I started this podcast, you and I are always in these mind-busting conversations. And, technology is just an unusual industry and frontier, which is why I wanted to bring you on the podcast. And I want to kick it off because there's so much conversation now about cybersecurity, being aware of that security on the internet. I'm going to turn the mic over to you and let you just jump into this.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. So, I guess, when we talk about cybersecurity, what are the things to be aware of? I think that's probably one of the very first things, I think. And, a lot of questions we get, when we do our audits and assessments of organizations, well, we're too small, we don't worry about that, and usually it's a conversation when I ask you, do you have a cyber insurance policy? And the answer is like, should we? Yeah, I mean, everybody's a target. Granny's a target. I mean, the bad guys, they don't care. 82% of these attacks, they all have a human element to them. Okay, there's some sort of human element. And, lack of training or investment or tools makes it easy for these folks to get into your systems and wreak havoc and lock up and steal your data. It happens. So churches, businesses, nonprofits, hospitals, individuals, small companies, big companies, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna give you a couple statistics here, which you might find pretty interesting here. 1 in 5 users were targeted like with a billion emails. Okay, a billion emails. 1 in 5 users were targeted. Okay, through email. Okay. Typical breach of a business costs about $4.35 million in damages. That's the statistic in 2022. And I'm getting these from, AAGIT.com. That's really, these are real numbers.
And those are reportable incidents, right?
Yes, these are reported incidents. You don't know what doesn't get reported.
Wow.
In 2022, 236.1 million ransomware attacks globally. Okay, look at your data, and you got to pay to get your data back, or you lose your data if you don't have good backups. And we just talked about the 1 in 10 companies. The most common attack is phishing. Okay,
Mhm.
send you an email and you click on that little link and it takes you to this really weird spot or whatever. And, or your IT department told you have to change your password.
Yeah.
I mean, and you click on that little button there and you get attacked.
Yeah.
Phishing, most common attack. So, and we just said 82% require a human element.
Yeah.
Guess who the biggest first country on the attack list is? How about the
Say,
UK?
oh wow. I was
How
gonna
about the
say,
UK? And then followed by the US.
yeah.
I
We click
mean, again,
everything here in the US.
these are real statistics,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we talk with a lot of companies
Mhm.
and helping them, shore up for that, and then coming up with processes and procedures.
Yeah.
Everybody forgets about that.
Yeah.
That my IT guy's got tools on my computer to keep that from happening. That's great. It's great you got tools and stuff, and you need to have tools. The
Mhm.
question is, but what do you do when something happens? And
Exactly.
usually the question is, well, I call my IT guy. Well, that's great, but if something does happen, when and if you have to go to litigation, which many of these do go to litigation, and then there's going to be government reporting at some point here, if, in some states there already is, in some countries, you have to explain what you did to prevent that from happening
Yeah.
ahead of time.
Yeah.
So things like, acceptable use policies, training your employees on how to look out for these attacks and things, what to look for, report, on a regular basis. And then things like, do you have a cyber liability policy in place? What does that cover? What does it exclude? Is your IT department, your IT people trained that if something does happen, they know what to do?
Mhm.
Do you know what to do? Do
Yeah.
you have a business continuity plan? In
Mhm.
many companies, you have to, you need to um, provide product to your customer. They don't care if your systems are locked up. They really don't.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so these are all things that people don't think about.
Yeah.
The IT guy's got that covered. He'll
You
take
are
care of
starting to burn up the LinkedIn chat. And we've got some folks that are saying, wow, didn't realize that it costs that much on average.
it. Yeah,
And we've got someone who has noted that recently they had a security breach that got
yeah,
into our emails and
yeah,
authorized a bank transaction close to $500,000
yeah,
and still fighting to get it resolved. And they seem to have coined the CFO's email address. So,
yep,
it's a mess and this stuff is real.
yeah.
So you're touching some buttons here,
It's
Mike.
what's it? Well, that's interesting. That sounds to me like what they call a spear phishing attack. And
Yeah.
so it's a very complex attack. It's not something that is just easy. It might start with phishing to get some information. However, I dealt with one time and it was a quick remediation. Unfortunately, nothing like that happened, but they cloned the domain of the company, one letter off, and they sent an email to the CFO saying, we need to buy this piece of equipment or whatever. It's $500,000, ironically, and can you please sign off on that? And then he sent the email to the purchasing person to approve from the CFO, approving the purchase of that. So they created a paper trail through this one little domain. But if you looked at that one letter, wow,
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
we caught that, we got called in and, to help them out, remediate the situation. And that's a spear phishing attack. That was an interesting one. And I
So
saw,
it's
and
not
that's not
just
the first one either I've seen. So
there's phishing as well.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, spear
That's
phishing.
something new for me as well.
Yeah,
You
Google
know,
that one.
it's it's become a necessity. I know when this
Yeah,
stuff started taking off, and I said to myself, I will never, ever become so dependent upon it.
yeah,
And just by default, I'm as dependent as the next person.
yeah,
And when I sit and have sat in the boardroom, and we went from it being just a minor conversation and update to becoming a major agenda item. How, from an executive level and perspective, is this as important to being integrated into the conversation? What can you share on that? Because a lot of our executives and people sitting around that boardroom table, they don't really have that perspective of how important it is to successful, sustainable operations.
Yeah. Well, I think, the important thing is it's like, and the way I tell clients when I advise them and the C-level execs,
Yeah.
it's not a matter, it's a matter of time when something happens. It's not if it happens, it's a matter of when. Okay. And if you look at the federal government's been hit so many times. Look at, you can Google out there, you can see how many times the federal government's been hit with something.
Sure.
That winds up in the headlines, large corporations, small corporations. And, the thing is, so if we take that reality that something is going to eventually happen, then let's take a step back. What can we do to mitigate as much of that risk as we can? And what can we do to mitigate the damages?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I go back to the same thing, a really good thought out process and procedure book, diagram. If you take a look at SOC 2, for instance, is one of the compliance items or compliance systems, you'll see that there are all kind of documents you want to keep. You want to know if an incident happens, what do I do? How does it get reported? If,
right.
These various things, I onboard people, how do I vet the employees I'm hiring? How do I vet my staff? How do I know if my staff is current and keeping up with these things? How do I vet my vendors?
I got another question that's just come in for you.
Yeah.
You hit a nerve, and I know I had a question come up on that, but one of our LinkedIn guests has asked, is there a way to highlight or stress to employees how real this is? And it seems like until it happens, everyone assumes it's a myth.
Well, and I've had to do discussions with people where we've rolled out security platforms.
Yeah.
That we manage. We have an interesting platform that we use.
Mm-hmm.
All of the employees at the company are required to take training. They're required to online in this platform that we use, and they're required to watch videos, and they get questions about it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just as simple as saying, this is something we're going to implement because part of our compliance process. If you ever have to deal with HIPAA or SOC 2, or you have to deal with Sarbanes-Oxley, whatever, you want things in place, or ISO, you want things in place that mitigate risk. And so we've deployed these systems. And the very first conversation I've had an opening up introducing the concept has been, let me show you what really happens in the real world and show them things. And I show them places that are like huge. The federal government, I mean, they spend billions on security, and one situation occurred, and again, it is really, it's serious. It is serious.
Yeah. They were talking about one of the software operation companies was talking about, I think they had gotten hacked or they had an incident.
Yeah.
And the one question that my husband and I probably said at the same time was, where are their contractors located? Are they located here in the US? Where are they located?
Yeah.
And he said, that's a good question.
Oh,
because there's a loss of security and stability when you start spreading people around all over the world in different countries. One of the other things that came into play for me as you were speaking is that security issue when you are separating from contractors as well as employees. Can you touch on that just a little bit? From the technology standpoint, we always take the HR piece, but that technology piece is where we can be vulnerable.
I can give you a couple of situations, where we've worked to take over clients, and sometimes they go well, and sometimes they don't. Where the previous company is willing to work with you or not. Good contracts and what responsibilities are really defining that well. Knowing that, where the boundaries are. And I think also, back on one of your original question, where are people located?
Yeah.
That's an interesting one because, okay, you are working with a firm or company or whatever contractor it is. It doesn't have to be even IT. Okay, but they report your data for your company in their systems, right?
Yes.
Are
Yes.
their systems protected? And the next question is, since they do that, the tools that they use, are those tools protected?
Exactly.
Do you see the domino effect?
Yes.
So
Yes.
understanding, there's a lot of understanding. And the very first question, like I asked when I talked to a technology provider, what system are you using internally to monitor my systems? What do you use to monitor my systems?
Yes.
I opened a door for you. So what are you using? I want to know these things.
Yeah.
And then how they're configured, how they operate, where's my data going to? All these questions you want to ask. And you start looking at things like GDPR, for instance, they're pretty precise on, you part company with an employee or you part company with somebody, they can say, I want to know where all of my personal data went into your system and I want it gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have to know how to do that. Around the world, there's all kinds of different compliance, and different states have different compliance requirements.
And different countries.
Different countries.
I'll never forget, a conversation I had with an HR exec, and it was one of our board meetings, and we had separated from a couple key employees. And the first question I asked was, have we removed their protocols to deny access? If you know this event is coming,
right?
Have we moved? And the answer was, well, no. We'll get to it. No. Have you let them go already? Well, yeah, we did that last week. Well, the minute that meeting was over, or maybe as they were going into the meeting, you needed to have those protocols down immediately. I've got another, and long story short, they left the meeting and they went and shut it down. Better yet, they texted their people at that point in the meeting with me so I could see them doing it. And they put the instruction out there because I'm like, we are vulnerable. I've got another comment that's come in from LinkedIn of all places. So many moving pieces, hard to track it all. We all have to be more mindful, responsible, and supportive of one another. The communication channels have got to be strong, stronger. And we cannot rely on technology to communicate some of these things.
Right.
I want to shift a little bit, Krysten, and, there's another hot button that is tied to AI. And cybersecurity, and it's almost they're kind of like kissing cousins at this point.
Yeah, they are.
So check in with us on that one, because I'm learning and I'm moving very, very cautiously about that as well.
Yeah, AI. Yeah, it's like, and I think a lot of people went along life and they're playing on Facebook and LinkedIn and things like that and haven't really noticed anything, right? I get a little pop-up on here that shows up my my friends I should be connected to, that on my Facebook, and I start seeing little ads come through of things that, wow, I was just thinking about that. That's AI. We've had AI the adoption rate of AI has doubled since 2017. Okay. And all of a sudden here, within the last last year, you have this chat GPT that pops up. Now everybody's like, oh, AI. Now there's attention to this. Then we've got self-driving cars. We've got all of these things that we're starting to see virtual travel agents. If I want to book a trip to someplace, I go on there and I book my trip, and I'm talking to somebody I think is a person, but it's not. It's a computer. It's a chatbot. Okay. And it's Siri. I talk to Siri. I talk to Alexa. I'm trying to make sure I don't set off my Alexa here. So, but it's like all of these things, these are all artificial intelligence.
Yes.
They are tools that, can make our life easier, but that still requires people to get through life.
Yes.
Yes. An example of that, where I say it's garbage in, garbage out. These things are great tools. The code is fantastic. Going into some of them, it's like I'm talking to a person. I ask it to create a document for me. Okay, fantastic tool, great document. But what if that document belongs to somebody else?
Exactly.
What if it's taken their pieces and parts of their hard work, and now you've just basically technically plagiarized someone else's work.
And you're monetizing it. So that's a
And
problem.
you're monetizing on top of that. And whose responsibility is that? There's court cases with this.
Right.
Okay, so now you're using it inside of your company. Okay, is there a problem there? Because this tool, and many times is inaccurate too. Mm-hmm. Garbage in, garbage out. It's pulling from Wikipedia and different sources, and there may be mistakes in those sources.
Exactly. I've got another comment that's come in from LinkedIn, and it says, "Will AI take my job?" Just kidding, everyone. On a serious note, I'm encouraging people to learn the tech because we still need people to put these tools in place and execute their functions, etc.
So we'll take ChatGPT as an example. We'll just because that seems to be the common thing everybody sees. ChatGPT is interesting. Is it going to take your job? No. You're going to learn how to use the tool to enhance your job.
Within your job, yeah.
Right. So you have to get the information out that you're looking for out of that system, you have to know how to ask it. Mm-hmm. And you have to know exactly how to format your question to get what you want out of it properly. Otherwise, you get junk.
Exactly.
And also keep in mind, these tools, we'll talk about this one in particular, it doesn't know the difference between a joke or something serious. So you keep something in there, and it doesn't know the context of the situation of your question. They don't do context.
Yeah.
So what you get back might not be what you are looking for, and it might not be accurate. Mm-hmm. So those are things just to keep in mind, when using these tools. Here's one you don't think about. Okay, you are using a computer online in someone else's system, and you're going in there and you are keying in a question on something you're researching. I'm researching something for R&D for my company. Okay, and this is R&D. This is your future of your company. You're researching something. Let's say a drug that you're working on or something. Okay, so the system that you're using, is that system secured? Mm-hmm. Because if not, okay, that system's not secured and there's history sitting there, or however it can be intercepted, okay, then that data that you're researching could become someone else's data. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, and it says it right in ChatGPT if you ask it about its its disclaimer. I want to read one to you. Personal data exposure. Although OpenAI has implemented privacy measures, there's always a risk of data exposure.
Yeah.
If users input personal, sensitive, or confidential information during a chat session, it could potentially be misused if the data were ever to be breached.
Yeah.
It's right there.
You got a lot of virtual nods going on, and someone has sent a comment over that their experience has been you get out what you put into Chat GPT.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And, great tool. I mean, a lot of people use it for all different purposes, and not just ChatGPT, other virtual systems too.
Right.
Healthcare. I mean, virtual. Like I said, we talk about travel assistance. I mean, I was really trying to go to Hawaii, but I wound up in Alaska. Anyway, it's they're just tools. They're not people on the other end.
World.
Exactly.
There. most people jump right in when it comes to the technology and they're fearless. But there are so many people out there who still command a fear
Yeah.
of just how rapidly this industry and environment is changing.
Mhm.
How can you help us, our listeners, in just kind of overcoming that? It's overcoming that fear, especially those who are leading organizations, divisions, their own companies.
Yeah.
What can you share in these few minutes that we have left to
Sure.
overcome that fear of managing all of this? It's
I think
overwhelming.
ask questions, ask lots of questions. Okay. One of the things that we like to do, I mean, we don't implement something without a plan.
Mhm.
Okay. And so if, putting some, again, back to, maybe we talked about that big book of procedures and processes that we help build.
Yes,
Well, one
yes.
of those in there is in order to implement something new, we have a plan and a process, and then we have things in place. So tempering that, following those processes, don't just throw something in because we could just throw it in.
Mhm.
I mean, putting chat, a chat bot into a situation where there's confidential information, maybe you block that stuff before it is deployed, or
Mhm.
tell the people, hey, look, we don't want this in our company right now. We're not ready for it. If
Mhm.
that's the case,
Mhm.
being able to temper that with the current process of procedures and balance, that's the way to do it. I wouldn't be afraid of it. And
Mhm.
then come back and say, okay, what tool do I want to do the job that I'm trying to accomplish?
Okay. And
Okay,
does
and
it
then look at
fit?
it.
Does it fit?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay.
And if you work it that way, as a manager, then you've got some control over this
Mhm.
versus just saying, go do whatever you want to do and, take off the security and go have fun. You don't want to do
Yeah.
that.
Because we know how competitive the environment is out
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And when you're sitting in a boardroom or a leadership meeting, you don't want to be that stick in the mud.
No.
But
Right.
sometimes that stick in the mud, especially in the world in which we live now,
Yeah.
can be a good thing to slow things down a little bit, because those that rush to the front without having that solid plan, is what I'm hearing you say,
Exactly.
will pay for it in the long run, or not,
Right.
maybe not even the long run, in the short run, because that's how
Yeah.
fast we're moving.
Yeah.
Um,
It's moving very fast. And I did read a statistic. It was actually a graph, and it showed the adoption rate of AI to be faster than any other technology deployed in history.
wow.
Okay, it's like, and it seems to double almost every year.
Wow.
And so it's there, but like anything else, you know, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
But know what you're going for, and making sure it's
Yes.
the right piece of right fit for the right piece of technology.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. And that's good to know. And that, I think that removes some of the fear as
Yeah.
well. But also having people like yourself, or knowing about people like yourself. I got Steve as well. And helping me to understand. I know, because in talking with both of you, in all the things that we talk about reciprocally, um, it's becoming an educated inquisitor. I just
Yeah.
made that up, but it sounded good. But
That sounds good.
and I'd love to make sure that people know how to keep this conversation with you going. And with that being said, I've got one more person that has dropped a comment into the chat box for me, and they said there is so much more in AI than what is currently mainstream, and this person is excited for what's to come as we can best manage it. But Krysten, how can people continue the conversation with you and bringing that world-renowned expertise that you and your team bring? How can we keep them in touch with you?
Well, email. phone calls. My number's on the slide there, and connect up with me on LinkedIn, because we're going to be doing more conversations and more discussions about these various different topics. AI security, process procedure. We have a lot of things coming up that we're going to be talking about. So,
yeah. And you know what, folks? You can always catch me for a live chat and talking out loud with you. Visit the www.cma-ent.com website. We're always there. We're always putting out great stuff. It is so exciting to have this conversation with you, my friend, out loud.
thank you.
And I look forward to keeping it going. And folks, please reach out to Krysten. And I want to hear from you as well. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody.
And Krysten, do you have any final words as we close out?
Don't be scared of it. The future is great. We're the next 10 years are going to be amazing. What we're going to see. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, it will. We've got some folks that said thank you once again, and they know that 30 minutes is always never enough. But we're so glad that you all joined us, whether you're on LinkedIn, here on Facebook, or here on Zoom with us. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next month. Thanks so much. Have a great month.